Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out and joining us today. It is 2 p.m., but we're going to stall for just a minute and allow maybe some other folks to get in here before we kick it off. But we're really excited for today's presentation. I think we have a good hour of content. If you have questions at all throughout, please feel free to submit either in the chat or to the Q&A. We'll have folks monitoring the entire time, and we'll work to get all questions answered. If we don't, we'll follow up afterwards via email. But, I don't think there's any reason to delay. So I think we are going to get started. So again, hello, welcome. Thank you for taking time out today to hear this webinar, to participate in this webinar, Uncovering Hidden Value, How Sketch Verification Helped Medina County Recover Millions in Tax Revenue. My name's Tim Horak. I'll be your host over the next hour. This webinar is presented by EagleView in partnership with Medina County, and we're excited to share how high-resolution aerial imagery and sketch verification can reveal untapped tax revenue and help counties maintain fair and accurate property records. We're looking forward to discussing some real-world results from Medina County and walk through how EagleView's technology helps assessors streamline reappraisals and correct historical inaccuracies in camera records. So, as we see here, let's start by introducing today's speakers. It's a fantastic lineup that we're blessed to have here. So, starting left to right, we have John Hunter, Director of Information Technology and Strategy for Medina County. He'll share the county's firsthand experience with sketch verification and our sketch verification solution, Sketch Inspect. Then we have the incomparable Wade Patterson, consultant at EagleView and past president of IAAO. He brings a deep subject matter expertise in property valuation and assessor best practices, and we'll cover some applicability for these solutions to meeting IAAO standards later in this presentation. Then we have Elliot Cox, our Senior Product Manager for Sketch Inspect. He's going to lead a demo and share insights into how we're scaling this solution. And as mentioned, I'm Tim Horak. I'm the Marketing Director here at EagleView, and I'll be guiding us through today's conversation. We do have a special celebrity guest as well. Alex Rod is joining us. He's our District Manager for Ohio and Michigan, and he'll be monitoring the Q&A. So if you do have questions throughout, please feel free to drop those in, and Alex will do his best to answer those on the fly, and I'll be supporting too, Alex. You're not alone in that endeavor. So let's go to the next slide quickly to take a look at the agenda for what we're covering today. We'll start with just a brief overview of EagleView, then we'll dive into sketch verification, what it is and why accurate data matters. Then, as mentioned, Elliot will walk through a live demo of Sketch Inspect, and we'll wrap with a case study from Medina County, and leaving time, obviously, at the end for Q&A. So please, as mentioned, drop questions in that chat as they come to you. And yes, this is being recorded, and you'll receive a link to the recording after the event so that you can share this with folks who may not have been able to attend with us today. So let's move to the next slide for just a brief overview of EagleView. I know most of you are likely familiar with us, but for anyone new to EagleView, we're a leader in high-resolution aerial imagery data, software, and analytics. We have over 1,000 employees, and we serve state and local governments across the U.S. and Canada. Our headquarters is in Rochester, New York, and over the years, we've built a library of more than 3.5 billion images and counting. It's probably closer to 4 at this point, and we cover 94% of the U.S. population. We're proud to support local government operations across departments from assessment and GIS, public safety, public works, and we do that by delivering high-resolution imagery and meaningful data that you can act on. So speaking of that imagery, let's go to the next slide and talk briefly about the types of imagery that makes sketch verification possible, starting with orthogonal imagery. So orthogonal imagery provides a straight-down 90-degree map-like view of the Earth. It's ideal for activities like measuring parcel boundaries, calculating surface area, and viewing spatial relationships in 2 dimensions. This imagery is most often used, I think we see this in GIS platforms and some assessment workflows, and it's incredibly useful. But it does have its limitations, especially when it comes to identifying vertical features or viewing property characteristics on the sides of buildings. And that's why we complement orthogonal imagery with oblique imagery. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see the same roundabout that we were just looking at from a 90-degree angle, now at more of a 45 to 50-degree angle. And oblique imagery captures buildings and structures at this angle, and you get the ability to rotate from all 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. That gives you a much more complete contextual view of any sort of property or location or asset that you're viewing. So as mentioned, this roundabout you can see a pedestrian sign. I think, Elliot, if you advance it, there's a little animation where this will pop up. Yeah, you can see this pedestrian sign that's would be completely hidden in an orthogonal image, but now it's visible in an oblique. And that is the power of viewing anything from multiple perspectives. So for sketch verification, this becomes especially valuable when you need to confirm structures, features, or square footage that aren't visible from the top-down view alone. So oblique imagery helps fill the gaps that orthogonal imagery can't address. They're complementary and they provide this visual context that we need to confidently verify property sketches. Eagle View, as a pioneer in oblique aerial imagery, we're exceptionally proud of our capability to capture this imagery at increasing resolutions, now up to 1 inch GSD and actually sub 1 inch. I think we'll see some examples in the next couple slides, but let's go to the next slide to really drive this point home. So at this point, I might be overdoing it, but I just want you to really leave with an appreciation, I think, for oblique imagery. So here we're looking at an ortho image of a city block. And Elliot, if you advance to maybe pop up some of those circles, these are some of the features that are visible from above. You can see manholes, traffic poles, utility markings, and this is very useful. We're not discounting orthos. But if you go to the next slide, an oblique of the same intersection, you're suddenly able to identify so much more, right? Fire hydrants, skylights, signage, air conditioning units that would be visible in an ortho, but you may not be able to totally understand what they are. So these are critical elements when verifying property sketches. They help confirm whether physical reality matches what's in the CAMA system, and they help identify features that might be missing from the sketch altogether. So these differences, when aggregated at scale across thousands of parcels, add up to substantial tax revenue and improved assessment accuracy, which John will speak to when he talks about Medina County's experience with sketch verification. Just a couple more slides for me. I think I want to move to show you a great residential example at a really high resolution. So this is actually probably sub 1 inch, so extremely high resolution. It's a single family home. You can see from this angle all the features that are visible: porch, balcony, additions, landscaping, roof condition, all of these elements that wouldn't be visible or maybe measurable in an ortho image alone. And then if we move to the next slide, I do want to touch on the fact that when clients procure Eagle View imagery, it's an umbrella contract. So if, let's say, the assessment department is leading procurement, that imagery is available at no additional cost to every other department within the county, and even the cities and municipalities within the county. There's no additional cost to use the imagery. So there's a really high return on investment for this product because of the utility, I guess, cross-departmental utility, and how much value all of these departments can get out of a single flight capture and ancillary solutions like Sketch Inspect, which we'll talk about more in a second. Just like I said, a few more slides. I do want to call out that an important point for us is that our imagery integrates directly into a lot of the systems that you already use. So whether it's CAMA, CAD, GIS, or public works software, we support over 150 third-party platforms. Our imagery integrates directly into it. So for you, that means less friction, faster adoption, and as I mentioned, more ROI from your investment. So let's take a look at imagery in a CAMA system. This is just what the integration would look like in practice, right? So this is a Vision CAMA software, and with the imagery right in the interface, assessors can validate, or whoever's looking at this, can validate property details with confidence. So one more slide for me as we transition over into Elliot's portion. Want to mention that anything that you see in our imagery, you can measure, right? Length, area, height, even elevation, and that's the power of oblique imagery that's geo-referenced. Every pixel corresponds to an XY location on the Earth, making it really accurate and giving you a lot of confidence. So this is more than just a picture, right? It's data embedded and imbued in an image, and that's what drives solutions like sketch verification. So with that, I'll hand it over to Elliot to walk us through how we turn this imagery into insights. So take it away, Elliot.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, this is where I come into play. So again, my name's Elliot Cox. I'm part of the product management team, and I'm responsible for data and insights products for government customers. Right. So just have a couple quick slides to kind of dovetail what Tim just went through to cover our imagery and just kind of briefly touch on our data products. Right, so we produce dozens of different, both natural and man-made data assets. Obviously, we're here to talk about structure-specific use case, right? But we produce data for land cover, transportation, vegetation, and natural hazards, those types of things. And the way we do that is we harness AI ML to take our high resolution imagery and apply machine learning to do the feature identification and feature extraction, and then apply a level of human QC to make sure the vectorized version of the imagery is of high quality, right? It needs to look man created, human digitized, human heads up digitized. So that's kind of a quick overview of what we do. But of course, today we want to talk about how we're transforming our high resolution imagery into critical insights, specifically for sketch verification. This is just a quick illustration of taking the imagery, creating building outlines in the middle, and on the right, we are applying analytics and appending specific attribution to highlight and show which of these buildings have a sketch issue. So that's just a quick, quick overview of the data portfolio. And now we're going to dive into the sketch verification solution and why data accuracy is important. So we'll hand it over to Wade.
Thank you, Elliot. Appreciate that. Coming from the assessment world like I do, we know that everything ties back to the square footage, to our accuracy of data in our world when it comes to assessment. And so many people use our data. So it is so important that we get that data accurate. This next slide, we actually talk about, these were the 4 cornerstones that we developed at IAAO. We had a lot of people that would say, well, why do you think that great assessment offices are very, professional or advanced? And we said everybody should have the same standards. Everybody should, follow the same rules, best practices, whether it's a tiny jurisdiction or whether it's the largest county in the United States. And it is appraised at a regular market value. Follow the IAAO technical standards. I will first tell you I'm an IAAO homer. Provide training to the assessors and allocate the adequate resources. These are the IAAO's cornerstones, and the IAAO is recognized as the mass appraisal expert, and especially in North America, but also being adopted across the entire world at this point. I preached this whenever I would speak for IAAO on my tour of leadership to IAAO, and I would tell everybody the same thing. And it was mainly to focus on the people that control the budget, to let them know these are the things that your assessor, your appraiser needs in their office to be successful. The IAAO itself has developed standards. And again, being the mass appraisal expert, people turn to the IAAO to say, well, how would you do this? The first that really pertains to what I did was a standard on mass appraisal of real property. And again, if you don't have a standard and you don't have some rules to follow, we just start going in totally different directions. This standard on mass appraisal, if you follow this, is a great roadmap for success, and its uniformity, which is the key to success. And mass appraisal, of course, is where we're valuing more than one. I don't know how many times I had people say, well, you're not really an appraiser because you don't do one at a time. I said, no, I do something a lot more difficult. I actually value thousands at a time using good data. So therefore, I have to have good data across the board. You don't want bad data seeping in there. This standard is actually, last time it was appraised or updated was 2019. They're currently looking at this standard again. The Technical Standards Committee is reviewing this in 2025. And hopefully by the end of this year, they'll have the updated standard. IAAO has asked us if we would comment on what the section called 3.3.2, which deals with aerial imagery and visual inspection using mass appraisal techniques, but utilizing aerial imagery, especially high resolution ortho and obliques, and which we've actually commented several times. I would also say that USPAP, which whether it's the real appraisers, as they say, or us, USPAP actually includes the standards on mass appraisal because they knew it is appraisal and you better have a standard on it if we want people to be uniform. And there are 15 standards, by the way, that IAAO currently has. This next one is the standard on data quality. This is where it kind of dives in. That mass appraisal standard talks about data quality, but the data quality standard actually deals with here's what you need. Here is the degree that you need to follow. And again, currency refers to how accurate is it? How recent is it? How deep are you getting in your data? Are you doing all of them the same, which is the key to success? It seems simple to say, but good data is the key to success. And I was thinking before this webinar, how many people actually use our data? You have data sources buying our data and selling it. So if you're looking on all the big sales firms or the real estate appraisal firms, Zillow and the others, they actually use your county assessor data that they buy from a clearinghouse. So again, your data needs to be clean because there's a lot of people seeing it. But one of the things I really wanted to focus on here was one word, is current. That is what is paramount in here. You've got to have a snapshot of what this property looks like at this point in time if we're going to value it. Historical data is great, but if we're not checking that, if we're not making sure that our data is accurate, then it's not current, and we're going to have a big problem when we try to analyze these values. We won't have uniformity. This next one is talking about why sketch verification matters. And again, I keep harping on it, but that cleanliness of our data, the uniformity of our data, the completeness of our data is paramount. Because once we start crunching these numbers, when we start selling this data, it has got to be clean. That old term, garbage in, garbage out, it's going to look bad. And those of you who actually put your data out on websites and you have your county assessor, your township web page for your assessor site, people will tell you all the time when your stuff's wrong. And I always counted that as a blessing because I wanted to know when I had an error, and we fixed it. We had a past president of IAAO from Louisiana named Jewett Farley, one of our best instructors, and my favorite, we called him Jewettisms. He had these sayings being from Louisiana. And one of them was, if you got to eat crow, eat it while it's hot. Which means if you find that you have an error, fix it and fix it fast and own it. Don't try to blame it on somebody else, but fix it. That way it doesn't keep reoccurring. And even the smallest of errors can make a big problem. And the next slide actually deals with a simple 2-foot error in our calculation where we're measuring it and it's been this way forever. And you see, if you have say this is a Dollar General, it's a small retail shop, whatever, you see that even that square footage difference is only 2 feet. But when you calculate that times so much per square foot, now all of a sudden it equals, in this example, a $20,000 error on value. And if you actually are a 3% effective tax rate state, which most states will run between 1% and 3% effective tax rate, some are a little higher. When you look at that, and that equals $600 worth of taxes. And I have people that say, wow, that's not that big of a deal. Well, as I used to tell my folks in the office, I'll let you tell them that $600 under the taxes isn't a big deal. But one of the other things to take away from this is when you're valuing property, whether you're using the cost, the income, sales comparison, AVMs, whatever, they're all going to refer back to that sketch that's in your CAMA system. And that is going to control, here's our living area, here's our garage, here's this. So everything goes back to that sketch. And if it's not right from the start, it just simply compounds the entire way through the valuation process. This case for sketch verification, this is one of those things that, again, when I was an assessor, we didn't really have much of this. We had, where we could actually check to see if we had sketches, but we didn't know if we had discrepancies, especially if I'm comparing a recent image and my old sketches. That is where I start finding my big differences now, where I can go back several years and find images to see when something was added. But if I have an embedded error and I'm not checking a new sketch over a new image, sometimes things get lost. So the beauty of sketch verification, from what I've seen, the systems I've looked at, is that it lets me find errors I didn't know I had, that I wouldn't have found by going to the field, because so many times we don't get to walk around the house like we did when I was young. So if you're not identifying it, you don't know about that 2 foot, on the back. And that's where our aerial imagery comes in so handy. But I'm thrilled to see that with the technology as it's advancing today, that we're now having these tools where we can automatically go in and say, okay, I think you may have an error here. And you're going to see in the next few slides where they will actually color code it. So you can determine, that's a big one. Or, okay, these are minor, and I'll focus on the ones that are really bad first. So with that, I'll turn it over. And I think it's either John or Elliot.
It's me. Thanks, Wade. Yeah, so we're just going to take it down another level and kind of get into the weeds of sketch verification, right? Wade was talking about, it's obviously important to have accurate and current sketch verification data, but, how do we help you, maintain that data, right? So sketch verification at a high, fundamental high level is we are comparing your sketch data from your CAMA to the aerial imagery and building outlines, right? So we're just doing a simple overlay and identifying and notating, yes, the sketches match. There's a minor mismatch, as you see in this case here, or there's a major fundamental mismatch, or there's just no sketch at all, right? So it's, at a high level, it's taking those geometries, if you will, and kind of overlaying and doing that analysis. Now, some of you may be existing change detection or change finder customers, and wondering, like, why can't I just use change finder to validate my database? And one of the big reasons is change detection is really all about comparing two sets of imagery, like what changed from last year to this year, right? Simple change detection, use case, right? But what that doesn't do is it's not detecting what might be existing fundamental issues in your CAMA database. So it's not picking up existing issues, right? So if we do change detection and you already had an issue that you didn't pick up on in your database, we're not going to pick that up with change detection, right? Because the building didn't change, right? So there's a fundamental difference between the change finder, change detection, and sketch verification, right? But if you combine those two, we're picking up on everything, right? We're picking up on the changes year over year, and we're picking up your CAMA, your database issues, whether they're missing sketches or inaccurate, outdated sketches, right? So it's kind of bringing the best of both worlds together, and it's, I think John said yesterday, it's all about providing you a current new baseline for your sketch database.
Hey, Elliot, one description I heard of this that I thought, or one analogy, I guess, that I heard once that I thought was really compelling was, imagine a tree, right? The change detection will pick up the leaves changing on the trees, but it won't tell you whether or not the roots are rotten. Sketch verification is the ability to determine whether or not the roots are rotten, for the integrity of the tree. And I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
That's a new one to me. I like that.
Yeah.
All right, so kind of want to help conceptualize, right, how we help you maintain accurate sketches. And I kind of put it in two buckets, right? So you guys are tasked with, validating which parcels may have inaccuracies with regard to the sketches, right? So what we do is we, again, take the sketch data and compare it to the imagery, and we notate which parcels match, which ones don't match. Either it's a minor mismatch or a major mismatch, or there's no sketch present, right? So it starts with labeling each parcel, each property with that match type, right? That's well and good, right? That gives you some data to work with. But what you really need is that next level. You need the visualization and the tools to really streamline your workflow, right? So we mentioned that the map visualization, right? So we take the sketch categories and we style each individual vector or each individual sketch to give you that visual representation of which property you see here. The green ones are a match. You don't really need to worry about those. The red ones, the orangey kind of yellow ones. Those are the ones you might need to go do some further inspection on, right? So taking the data, giving you a visualization to help you kind of conceptualize where further investigation is needed. And then really what kind of brings it all together and helps you review the entire jurisdiction and really streamline is the Sketch Inspect user interface. It's all about bringing the data together and helping you prioritize those parcels that really need your attention. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to do a quick demo to kind of bring to life kind of what that all means. Give me 1 second to cue that up.
Well, thanks, Elliot. And while you're pulling that up, the tool, it sort of automatically does this, right? It doesn't take a long time for the data, once we have it in-house, to be turned around and get back to a customer. This can be sometimes as quick as 30 days after we receive data, if we have a supported CAMA system, that you can get this information back and then start to use it in an interface like this.
Right. Yeah. So as Tim was saying, we do the sketch verification analysis, and we label the data and load it up in this user interface that I'm assuming everyone can see. So I'm going to do a quick tour of the user interface and kind of give you a quick insight into really what makes this application powerful, right? So over on the left-hand side, you've got some information about the particular parcel that you will be reviewing, parcel ID, address, ownership, those types of attributes. You've got the ability to search for specific parcels, and you can export your data. But one of the big things here, again, what are we looking at, right? So the lower left-hand corner is the legend that's helping you connect the dots between the map in the middle and the attribution that comes with the data, right? So again, your greens are your matches, your reds are your major mismatches, and these purple outlines are buildings or structures that do not have a sketch. Those are big ones we want to pay attention to. In the middle, you're seeing the kind of traditional map viewer, and this is a demo data set, so this is just a small subset of a jurisdiction. I think there's 90 to 100 properties here. The upper right-hand corner, we've got the sketch data itself, right? So you've got the different components to help you to visualize the different elements of the sketch. And then what really kind of makes this application come to life and provide that power and the optimization of working through a huge data set, right? You could have 100,000 parcels you need to work through, and maybe only 10,000 of them have a sketch issue, whether it's a mismatch, it's outdated, or it just doesn't have a sketch, right? And what that is we have this filtering capability that helps you work through based off of certain criteria, right? So you've got all these different filtering options. You can filter your data set by location, if you have different, parcel types, residential versus commercial, those types of things. But what we've done is we've pre-configured some filters based off of what we think are the most criteria to look at, right? So number one, new buildings that you might not know about, right? They don't have a sketch. Number two, large changes or the major mismatches, right? And then you can see all the different options that we have pre-configured that helps you set up the filters so you don't have to go one by one. So I'll just kind of go through a couple of examples. We'll start with the first scenario. So we click on number one, which is going to filter the data set and identify and drill down and only show the buildings that are new that you might not know about in your sketch database. So we're going to select that, and we're going to say use recommended presets, and you'll see that it changed 3 filters, and it's highlighted. Right. So what that did is it kind of automatically changed those filters based off of the criteria for that scenario. Now, I do have to change this one because this is a demo environment, and some of these records have been reviewed. So I have to change this to any. So what we do is we then apply filters, and it's going to queue up and drill down and filter your records and identify as you can see here, there are 6 properties that meet that criteria, meaning there are 6 properties in this data set that they've identified a new structure that does not have a sketch. So I hit go, it queued up the first property, and you can see a couple of things here, right? So we've got a couple of buildings. One is green, right? So this is the main dwelling, right? We've notated that the main dwelling doesn't have any noticeable change in the sketch. The building aligns fairly well. And so we've notated that building is a match. But what we do want to call out is the building in the upper left there. It's the purple outline. And what that means is there's no sketch, right? And how we can validate that is we can go into the map layers and we can open up the previous imagery, and you can see that there's no building there. We have this kind of dual pane swiper here where you can toggle back and forth between the sets of imagery. So you can quickly identify from your desktop, oh, yep, there's a building there, but we don't have a sketch, okay? We could toggle to the next record. Again, the same criteria is applied. It's the same filter set. So again, we're identifying new buildings that do not have a sketch, right? So it should look very familiar to the previous example. The main dwelling is a match, but there's this shed or some other building that has been constructed. Again, we can verify that by opening up the old imagery, and you can see it's just a dirt patch, right? So again, visually identifying and validating that there has been a change on this parcel and you may not have a sketch in your database, right? So again, we've applied the filters. We're helping work through your large data set based off of certain criteria, the criteria that is most important for sketch and CAMA validation, right? So this first one, there's 6 records. If we want to move on to the next scenario, right? We open up the filter dialog. We can go to scenario 2, which is change buildings. Use the recommended presets. It changed a couple of the filters. Again, I have to toggle this one back and then apply filters. And it's gonna queue up 5 records that meet this criteria. Okay. Do very similar things. Open up the layer control. Open up the previous imagery. And again, you can see this building in the lower right. Maybe I'll open up another layer here, the previous building outlines to really highlight what we're seeing here. So maybe you can see that blue box, right? So there was a structure there before, whatever that is, but now you can see there's a much larger detached garage, right? So this is the scenario where there was a building there was something, there is a sketch in the database, but there's obviously something new there. So again, you can toggle through the records, do your analysis, right? So there's different pre-configured filters that help you optimize your workflow and really prioritize your work to really only focus on the areas of impact, so to speak. A couple other things to call out. There are these concepts of applying a status to each record, so you can pass or fail or correct information in your CAMA as you're going through each record. You can notate what you found, right? You can flag the status, and you can also leave notes as you see people have gone through these records and notated what they have found through their review process. So that's kind of a quick overview of the Sketch Inspect user interface. Again, it's about taking the sketch verification process that our analysts apply to your data set, loading it up in this viewer and helping you drill down and filter and focus on the areas of importance, the parcels that have missing sketches or inaccurate sketches, and it really just cuts out all the noise and helps you update your records very quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, that's awesome, Elliot. Thanks for that. It's really powerful. You're right. Makes for really efficient review by having you focused on the most problematic areas. And then for those buildings without a sketch, the implication there is that they're not on the tax roll, right? They're sort of unknown to the county or the entity. Very cool. There's been a few questions and comment. Oh, go ahead. If
There
you
was
have
one
something.
other thing I wanted to point out. I know you wanted to show the oblique viewer, right? So another tab on this application, there is
Yeah.
our oblique view to help you, again, just provide another way of interrogating this property, if you will, so you can see, the before and after from an oblique perspective. So in
Cool.
this case, if you notice back here, this was categorized as a major mismatch, and you can see the red sketch doesn't quite match up with the actual building, and we can help validate that through our oblique imagery. So you can see there's, looks like a 4-car garage, but if we go back in time, see if I can select the correct imagery, you can see that there's a difference here. They obviously added on to their garage, and they knew they were going to do that, right? Because you can see the driveway parking area. It was kind of prepared for that. So just another tool in the toolkit to help you guys review remotely changes in your jurisdiction.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, let's pause for a second and address some of the questions that we've had come in that are relevant or were inspired by that demo. First question we had was from Lisa Wheeler. How do we open this in CAMA? And I mentioned, I think when I earlier was showing or talking about the integrations, that was our imagery being integrated into CAMA systems. Sketch Inspect is its own sort of interface, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the interface you just saw is a standalone application. Now we are working on developing a way to add the sketch verification data and the filtering capabilities with our API, the map viewer, the embedded explorer. So we are working on solving that, but it's not a current capability today.
Gotcha. Thanks. And we had two questions from Christina Barrows. Thank you for these, Christina. First question, do you start with Eagle View? Oh, I just lost it. Hold on. It moved. Sorry, it moved on me. Do you start with Eagle View created building footprint feature? Wait, I'm reading this. Do you start with Eagle View created building footprint feature class to compare or local data sets? Sorry,
Yep,
good with that.
we have a production operation that creates building outlines with our imagery, and so we use that data to do the comparison.
Cool, thanks. And then Christina had a follow-up too. Can you correct the building footprint from here, meaning in Sketch Inspect, or just identify it?
Yeah, it's all about identification and prioritization. So there's no quote unquote like editing capabilities to update the sketch in your database. That's another thing we're trying to solve, right? So as we're working on integrating our ecosystem with the various camas, one is making the visualization and the data available in the cama, but then figuring out a way to allow those data sets to talk to one another, so to speak.
Totally cool. But yeah, and you can flag it in the Sketch Inspect interface as something that
Correct.
needs to be corrected
Correct.
and then assign that to somebody again.
Correct.
Brad Wills asks, how does the sketch verification take into account the roof overhangs?
Yeah, that's getting into the weeds of the building outline production process. But yeah, there is methodology / algorithms for how they account for kind of the offset of the top-down view of the roof overhang compared to the building footprint. So the production team does take into account, and they can utilize oblique imagery to help in that process, right? You can see the approximate size of roof overhangs.
Gotcha. And then related, kind of the same thing. Does the outline show the roof edge or the foundation edge?
So the outline, it's a roof outline, but they do apply an algorithm to approximate the building footprint.
That's great. Cool.
I
All
know
right.
it's
Thanks.
maybe not as the most straightforward answer, but yeah, it's all about approximating the building footprint, right? Because from a top-down view, the roof overhang obscures that to a degree, but they do their best to get the building footprint.
Great, thanks. And John Hodge was asking what the resolution for the imagery was in the demo, and Alex mentioned that it's 3-inch resolution. So for anybody that was wondering the same thing during the demo. But all right, well, let's jump back into the presentation. I think everyone's eager to hear from John. and Medina County's experience with this solution and the results they were able to achieve.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to kind of delve in. I think it's important just to give you a very quick and concise picture of what Medina County was. So Medina County had a new auditor take over after the former auditor was in office 29 years. It was not a smooth transition at all. There was no sharing of information, data. In fact, barring from the office was was what happened. And so as we were going through, and I came aboard as part of the new auditor team, and I won't go into those details because I don't believe they're relevant to our discussion. And we can go to the first slide even. So when I was about a week on to the job, we had a demo and informational session with Eagleview in coming in. One of the things that we had discussed was flying the county and getting imagery on a yearly basis instead of our former contract. We thought that was important, and we thought that was important because it's becoming more and more difficult to have boots on the ground. So anytime, our philosophy is anytime you can use technology to help and assist in your daily process and operations, you should take full advantage of that. So it's one of the reasons we wanted to do the fly on it a yearly basis, new construction, things of that nature for those in the assessor's office. We decided leaf off was the best method to go. The 3-inch imagery is fine for what we're using. I think we'll have some further discussions countywide as to going to a better resolution, probably the 1-inch at some point for some of the other entities and how they use it. I think it's important to note, while I'm talking from an assessor's standpoint, auditor standpoint, the data itself probably has a greater impact once you have it captured for a lot of other areas outside of the auditor's office and what we use it for. Our appraisers at the time said, we've been keeping up with new construction. We don't need sketch inspect. It's just a cost we don't have to incur. Again, I'm about a week on the job. I don't want to say too much. I don't even know half the people in the room's names at that point. So we'll go on to the next slide. So as it happens, we're a new auditor. We have our triennial reappraisal. Really, in Ohio, you have 2 6-year cycles. That's our 2025 appraisal is our major reappraisal. So we have to view every property that's in Medina County. Again, new auditor, new management staff and decision makers, a lack of manpower, and to no fault of their own, a lack of keeping current with training and standards and guides of that, an extremely old technology stack that we're still struggling with, and a lack of documented process. And that lack of documented process really speaks to uniformity and keeping the process the same overall, which is one of the fundamental guidelines. When you're doing mass appraisal, you don't want to chase sales. You don't want to look at properties necessarily individual. You're looking to uniformly put value out for the entire county. So we'll go to the next slide. So I had made the decision that from a cost standpoint, Sketch Inspect was a no-brainer, even if there was little financial value to it, just from the sense that we didn't know, we didn't trust the data we had, the integrity of the data, the consistency of the data, the methodology of the data, meeting appraisal standards. And so we decided to do that. We decided as part of that process to also do street level photography, which is nice from an updated website and people see their house and things of that nature. It also helped us meet some statutory requirements. So the appraisal company that we are currently using was selected by the other auditor. We have a great relationship with them. We love the work they're doing. Kind of ran this by them, and they're like, this would be useful. We used the Sketch Inspect to also develop clear workflows on what properties needed to be seen and seen quickly. And then evaluated because they would have the most impact on the tax rolls. And I should mention, we're getting towards the tail end of completing the reappraisal. In about another month, we will start to put together our tentative abstract for the state of Ohio, meet the ratios and things of that nature. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show you this is one block that we saw when Sketch Inspect. Now we can't really zoom in on it, but there's probably 10 to 12 structures that were entirely off the tax records. There's a lot of matches. There's a lot of the orange, and the orange tends, for at least our purpose, to be sketches are correct. They're just skewed on the imagery. So that's something we'll be able to adjust, but at a later time because it's not critical. It's not affecting value things of that. Major mismatches and missing structures, huge importance. And so we'll skip to the next slide. So what does this kind of meant? So Sketch Inspect gave us a great overview of where we are. So we have a total of just over 85,000 parcels, about 145,000 or so sketches on the parcels. Of that, we have a match on 75, call it 18 and a half minor mismatches that we're not concerned about because they don't affect the value. And that's what we're doing from an assessment standpoint. Will we get to it and clean up the data? Absolutely. Is it critical to the tax rolls at this point and valuation? No. The really alarming information, I don't use that term lightly, was what we had as far as major mismatches and then no matches at all. And I think this gets back to the point that was made earlier, a very glaring example of if I had used change detection instead of Sketch Inspect, I'm probably missing conservatively 35,000 of those mismatched no parcels. And that's real dollars on the tax roll. So huge benefit right off the bat before we even talk dollars and cents. And then we'll go on to the next slide. So in calculating, like I said, we're still in the process. We're getting towards the end. Just from a man-hour standpoint, so boots on the ground. One, we're stretched as is to get done what we're done, but we probably saved a month and a half to 2 months of what would it be the equivalent of 2 people on the ground just by using this project. So right there, 12 to 16,000, not huge savings. Where the real benefit though is that we were able to complete the process in the project. We got a little bit of a late start because the transition to the auditors. We can complete the process in time to submit our abstract tentatively to the state. So we're not looking at will there be time overruns? I've never worked on a reappraisal where you don't ask for at least a little extension, but it will be well within the guides of what would be normal. So from that impact, fantastic. I know that's not a dollar impact, but that's an important impact. We're estimating somewhere between 35 and 40 million added to the tax rolls. So that's a 12 to 14 million dollar increase of tax revenue, and that becomes fairly significant. Especially in Ohio, we're struggling with property taxes and how they're done in the state of Ohio. There's a lot of legislative action in trying to correct some of those problems. So we have that. I know I want to save some time. I know I went kind of quickly through that. I think we might have one more slide, maybe a couple. So kind of as a recap. So we're going to finish the reappraisal in a timely fashion. And again, if you would have asked me a year ago, I would have said we probably would have needed a month and a half, 2-month extension. So we're not going to need that. More accurate records of the inventory. So what we're doing is we're rebuilding that CAMA data, which is just essential for the government, for private entities using our data, for giving a true and accurate picture of what the county is. We're going to increase the tax revenue by catching what was missed. So we're not having tax increases across the board necessarily to increase revenue, although that will most likely happen. But we're picking up things that should have been picked up and should have been being taxed correctly, and they're not. Better data for analytics and data modeling. And we've already had a ton of interest from EMS, police, fire, some of the sanitary engineering needs, some of the engineering needs that they're like, wow, this data is really helpful to things outside of what we even thought. So we like that. We've identified a bunch of economic development opportunities that weren't known before. So trying to get better utilization of land, which is huge and helps the county in numerous ways. And then we're going to really look at, I think, lower volume of Board of Revision hearings, because we do have the accurate data, and we're using that data to apply the tax rates and the assessment process properly.
Very cool. Thanks, John. And yeah, I think you used the phrase the other day. This solution sort of allows you to hit the reset button so that your data is pulled up into its most accurate and current form, because of communities are like living organisms, right? Growing and shrinking and changing over time, and this just helps you keep up with that in an efficient way.
And I think it's important. Yes, you can use change detection, and you can catch a lot, but you've got to really know your bases there and accurate. And there are, fortunate or not unfortunate, yeah, we have access to the building permits, but not everyone's picking a building permit for what they're doing. You know, they're building, you know, a pole barn that turns into an in-law suite because their parents have aged and they can't be on their own, and so there's things of that nature that, you know, people are just doing out of convenience or what they need to do, and you got to be able to catch and track that. So
Totally. Great. Well, thanks. Yeah, let's move into Q&A. And thank you again, John. That was a
yeah.
really great walkthrough. Really appreciate you sharing Medina County's experience with us and the attendees. First question here, I'm going to go kind of out of order. This one comes from John Hodge, and I believe, John, this is for you. How did you handle unpermitted structures that were found? Are you able to account for and add value before a valid permit is issued, or did you have to enforce that first?
So we are actually, the building permit process is handled by the cities and villages. We will make aware with some of the list and stuff what we found, but our main focus is getting it on the tax roll as the structure as it is. Though I'm absolutely certain there'll be follow-up. I don't know how much of that'll be us and how much of that'll be the various cities, but I think that there will be a continuation of benefits from the process other than just getting it on the tax rolls. I do think you'll see some people making sure some things are taken care of.
Great, thanks. And we had a request from Terry Gonzalez to go back to the stats page. So we've gone back to this slide, super compelling. And you know, if Medina County was able to achieve these results, it stands to reason that every county could benefit from at least doing this once, like we said, to sort of hit the reset button and bring sketch data up to its most current accuracy compared to aerial imagery. Let's jump back into a few questions. I know we're getting close to time. We're going to stay here and try to answer these questions, but I know if people have other commitments, feel free to drop, but I think we'd like to stay and answer as many questions as we can. So question from Hope, and Elliot, this might come from for you. We don't sketch out our buildings. Is there a way to save time by removing outbuildings from the list?
Yeah, that's a good question. Alex might have a better way to answer this, but we do analyze the non-sketched appraised items. But each project, you know, and each customer is a little nuanced, I guess, and our team works upon project configuration to kind of uncover the nuances in your jurisdiction, how our system needs to account for those types of scenarios, like, you know, non-sketched appraised items, pole billings, those types of things. So we do factor that in. Alex, do you want to add any color to that? I know you might have a little bit more insights, or John, from your actual projects.
Sure. I can jump in here. So, you know, I know in Ohio, and I work with a majority of folks through Ohio and Michigan. You know, in Ohio, if you have an outbuilding that does not have a sketch, one of my first questions would be, do you have a line item in your CAMA system that has, you know, any dimensions depicting that outbuilding, right? So if it's a 20 by 20 outbuilding and you have those dimensions within your CAMA system, you don't necessarily have to have a sketch or have a sketch built out. What we do is we end up getting that sketch extract, and then we will create a 20 by 20 building for that, or a building outline for that line item, and then that's when we overlay that. And the algorithm in Sketch Inspect actually is smart enough to normally pick the right building, because I know if you're looking at a farm or a rural parcel that has, let's say 6 or 7 outbuildings, you can have a variety of different measurements or line items, some of them being very similar. Our algorithm is going to place them the best it can. If it doesn't place them correctly, or maybe it can't, let's say there's too many buildings that are like in shape, then it's going to highlight that for you so you can tell.
Thanks,
Awesome,
Al.
thanks. I want to go back to a question that a couple questions I missed earlier. John, when you were mentioning street level photography, I believe you contracted with Cyclomedia for that, or did
No, we actually just took photographs. I think eventually we will use a vendor to do that. It just wasn't of a high priority for us. We felt getting our baseline in order, both from a GIS standpoint and then also from a accuracy on CAMA data. What was the most important factors for us? We're probably looking realistically, probably at 4 to 6 years to get it where I would feel comfortable with the data and the accuracy. Again, we're talking with Eagle View and Alex about we're flying Leaf on. We're going to do that every 6 years, but we're looking at probably adding the fourth dimension on this next fly, which is the infrared, to get a lot of information on agricultural stuff, crop, forestry, those type of things. We see some value in that and think the cost is justified to do that. And then at some point we'll put together some LiDAR too. We're really looking overall at a real technology refresh and using the resources, because it goes far beyond the assessor's office, auditor's office, and you pay for it once and then you roll out this to other agencies. It's just an effective and efficient use of tax dollars to really have a multiplier effect on good government and doing what you need to do as a government and putting together information that accurately depicts what you need to depict statutorily.
Totally, and it can create a flywheel effect too, right? So
Yeah.
you purchase a flight, you procure these solutions like change detection and sketch verification. They find additional or missing taxable value, creates new tax revenue that can then be used to fund the purchase of additional flights and solutions to keep this going, and it becomes kind of a self-funding mechanism. I had a question from Christina Barrows, and Christina, I'm not sure I know exactly what you mean, but the question was, what is the vintage of the imagery used for comparison? I don't know if you were referring to the year of the flight that Medina County had, or what would be the vintage of the imagery that anyone would use for Sketch Inspect. John, I think your flight was in what year?
So because of our time frame, I don't know how many people are on this from Ohio or not. We definitely wanted Leaf off. We flew in the fall of 2023. We didn't feel we could wait till the springtime, March area, to get that imagery in the can. I will say, I was definitely shocked, and I think my team was definitely shocked on how fast the turnaround was from flight to actual usable data.
Yeah.
It definitely helped us meet our timelines, and I wasn't expecting that, and so we were able to use some of that time to do some other things that we needed to do, which is much appreciated.
Yeah. And I guess
Ideally, it's when you're looking at every property and you're not doing a evaluation using algorithms, and you don't have to view every property. You know, you could probably use the imagery from that year. In Ohio, the best time to fly because of shadows and stuff like that, if you want leaf off, is really that spring before the trees start budding, from a shadow perspective. But we didn't feel we had that option at that
Gotcha.
time. So
Yeah,
so
just
we were maybe 6 months more than we would be the next time we do it.
yeah, just to add another a bit of context, the sketch verification process can be applied to any vintage of Eagle View imagery, really. So if you have a recent flight or an upcoming flight, the process can be run against any of that imagery. So
Cool. Question from Mike W. This might be pretty specific. How does the system handle a situation if the house and garage is sketched in, but a pole building or barn is not sketched, but is currently valued on another screen? I'm not sure I totally understand. I'm sorry, Mike. I don't know if Elliot, if you can see that in the chat.
it sounds similar to what Alex described previously, but maybe I'm
Okay. Yeah, sorry, Mike. Why don't we move, Elliot, if you can go to the final slide with everyone's email address. Mike, if you want to shoot Elliot an email with maybe like a detailed version of that question, we can get back to you with an answer on that. This is from Walt Lindsay. Does Sketch Inspect work with most mapping vendors if we are using Eagle View images?
Yeah, it looks like, did Alex answer that one? Yeah, so
Oh, sorry. I haven't caught up. My fault. Thanks.
it's all good. I mean, I was typing up a separate answer in addition to Alex's, but yeah, the verification data or the validation data set, right? We showed it loaded in the Sketch Inspect viewer today. There is another viewer for Apex that's very similar, but we also make the data, like the shapefile, available if you want to, for some reason, view it in something like ArcGIS Pro or something else. So we try to be as flexible as possible. But again, the Sketch Inspect viewer has some workflow optimization tools like the filters and other things that really are fit for that purpose of working through that data set.
I'll also add to that really quick, Elliot. Lindsay, I think if I'm reading your question correctly too, if you're asking if our process really works based on Eagle View images or any type of aerial imagery, we prefer to use Eagle View imagery. We can control our own building outline process a little easier that way. As Elliot mentioned before, building outlines, they are derived from looking at a top-down image. So we're seeing that from the roof. And then there's that algorithm using oblique imagery to kind of tighten that in with that average overhang for roof overhang. So that's why we like to use our own. That being said, we can use outside imagery, but we do have to go through some spec to make sure that outside imagery will work within our workflow.
Right.
Okay. Well, I think we've done a good job answering all the questions. If your question didn't get answered, please reach out to any of the folks on the screen here. Really appreciate everyone's time and for sticking with us past the hour. Great session. Thanks to all the presenters. And yeah, if you have any questions about any Eagle View solutions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to support your county's journey into embracing maybe these new technologies, similar to the way that John has been on the vanguard and bringing Medina County forward by embracing imagery and all the ancillary solutions that are sort of empowered by aerial imagery. So thanks a ton, everyone. Really appreciate it, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.